yesterday.
Wow.
So Christmas is all set up at the Hegseth.
I think that's an acceptable day. Friday after Thanksgiving is an acceptable day to hang the Christmas lights and begin to decorate for Christmas. I personally would push it a couple more days and wring everything you can out of Thanksgiving.
Normally.
But I don't like it when we jump Thanksgiving. You don't either. We're together on this. Hang Christmas lights too early. Okay, good. We need to celebrate Thanksgiving before we move on to Christmas.
Yep, but we're moved on.
All right, and we move on. Starting with this.
Right.
President Biden announcing the U.S. will limit travel from 8 southern African countries starting Monday amid fears of the new heavily mutated COVID strain.
The World Health Organization naming the new variant Omicron. Is that right?
I think
so. It's a new one. It's a new virus, so new spelling, and it's designating it as a variant of concern.
Alexandria Hoff joins us live from Washington, D.C. with more. Alexandria, good morning.
Well, good morning. According to researchers in South Africa, the Delta variant has 2 mutations to its receptor binding domain, while the Omicron variant, as it's called, has 10. They're looking into right now what that means for transmissibility and immune response. The variant has turned up so far in Botswana, Hong Kong, and is proliferating in South Africa. Reports also include a presence in Belgium. Right now, the U.S. is joining the U.K. and European Union in pausing travel to South Africa and 7 neighboring nations. Here's President Biden from Nantucket.
I've decided that we're going to be cautious, make sure there's no travel to and from South Africa and 6 other countries in that region, and except for American citizens who are able to come back. But we don't know a lot about the variant except that it is a great concern. It seems to spread rapidly, and I spent about a half hour this morning with my COVID team led by Dr. Fauci, and so that was the decision we made.
As vaccine effectiveness against the new variant is being studied, President Biden is urging all Americans who have not been vaccinated to receive the shots, calling it their patriotic responsibility. Here's Fox News contributor Dr. Mark Siegel.
The word mutation is a scary word, but I want to point out that a mutation doesn't necessarily make the virus more effective. It could be less. It's for sure the case that the vaccines are going to continue to work against this variant. The question is how decreased their effectiveness will be.
While the CDC says there are no confirmed cases of the variant so far in the U.S., New York's governor has declared a state of emergency, halting elective surgeries. And fears over the new and potentially more dangerous variant plus these travel bans caused a Friday market tumble, which the president did say he expected. And we do have some breaking news this morning. The Associated Press is reporting that 61 people who arrived in the Netherlands from South Africa have tested positive today for COVID-19. Further tests are being conducted right now to see if they do have the Omicron variant. Well, Rachel, Pete.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexandria. What a fascinating moment in history. We are suddenly certain of what we need to do: shut down, lock down, shut down travel, and openly acknowledging how little we know about Omicron. Do the vaccines work? We don't know. Where is it contained? We don't know. If it's in the Netherlands, by the way, it's here.
Yeah.
It's here if it's in the Netherlands. And yet, do the vaccines work? Do we need a new booster for it? There's a new variant and a new state of emergency and a new set of fears to peddle the United States public at every seasonal turn. And yet, we know nothing. We know nothing about this variant except it's time to freak out once again.
Well, here's what we do know. There's a travel ban now. I should not say now. It starts Monday. So if it's so urgent,
that is such a great point.
Let's just hold off till Monday. Then we start the travel ban and block. We're going to block the virus from coming in. Well, let's do a little flashback here. You remember travel bans. They were quite controversial during the campaign because then President Trump banned travel immediately from China. And here's a portion of how then candidate Joe Biden tweeted about it. This is February of 2020. Remember this? He said, "We're in the midst of a crisis with the coronavirus. We need to lead the way with science, not Donald Trump's record of hysteria, xenophobia, and fear-mongering. He is the worst possible person to lead our country through a global health emergency." Followed by this tweet same day. He said, "Trump further diminished the U.S. in the eyes of the world by expanding his travel ban. This new African ban is designed to make it harder for black and brown people to immigrate to the United States. It's a disgrace, and we cannot let him succeed." Oh, and now we have an African ban.
Now we have an African ban. Well, by the way, also, Dr. Mark Siegel, who you're going to be speaking with a little bit later, said that the travel ban doesn't work because a lot of people will just go to another country. So you can't come in from South Africa, but the South African person might go somewhere else and then come here. So a lot of other doctors, including Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, is saying, listen, these travel bans don't work. But
you could also just come across the southern border.
You could also come across. And by the way, Fauci completely silent when asked about that earlier. I think last spring, he said, "I can't get involved in politics." So. Okay, but I think, this, you bring up a great point. Even before Kyle Rittenhouse was smeared, Joe Biden was smearing Donald Trump and calling him a xenophobe and a racist and somebody trying to keep black and brown people out of the country because he thought it was a good idea to do a travel ban, which now Joe Biden has done.
You can walk
you can't
out.
Make it up.
You can walk out on the streets of New York, or at least you could back in the day. And they used to play 3-card Monte or a shell game and hide the ball. And there were guys that were really good at it, and they would take your money. And then there's the guy that's bad at it, and you can see the ball moving. I know which one it's under. I know which the card trick. They play fear of the coronavirus, and they play race for this horrendous con game to play the American public. A bad con game, an obvious con game for votes. The set of tweets you just laid out, Pete, is so absurd. I mean, you're getting played, America. You're getting played.
Do you think people are over it, though? I mean, like, not the virus, but this game that you're talking about, that you keep calling people racist whenever you want your way politically. And I just think people are over it.
Starting to be.
But the politicians aren't. I mean, the governor of New York has already declared a state of emergency, a preemptive state of emergency.
Right.
So the politicians know exactly where to go with these moments, which is more control. And by the way, the name of this
This is great.
Omicron. They skipped over what is it? Is it the Greek alphabet?
It's the Greek alphabet.
And they skipped over new, N-U, because I guess a new variant sounds like new, and they skipped over she.
He has
XI.
Yeah.
The one person most responsible for this deserves a naming of a variant, at the very least.
But
it shows how scared people are of Xi. I mean, it's so crazy. And by the way, this new variant, which could, I mean, look, as you said, we don't know anything about it. This new variant could possibly wreak more havoc on our economy and on our American way of life. The call to find the origins and to hold China responsible couldn't be more clear. And yet, we're already bowing in just naming the variant to China.
Once more, we're getting totally played.
We're getting played.
By the way, if you wouldn't mind, on the latest episode of the Will Cain podcast, or one of the latest episodes, I talked to Lord Matt Ridley, about the origins of COVID, and they have a new book out. I believe he might be on the show coming up soon.
Lord Matt Ridley?
Lord Matt Ridley.
Man, I would love that title.
Where all the evidence points of where this virus originated from, and why we might be tiptoeing around what we name these variants. Also coming up in about 5 minutes is Dr. Marty Makary, who we're going to be talking to about this latest variant.
Always a very honest broker when it comes to this conversation. Meanwhile, let's talk about the economy and let's talk about shopping, because a lot of people are out there shopping today. It is Black Friday after all, and a lot of people are getting this message on their phone or from the businesses that they're shopping at saying, hey, we're out of stock. That message is up 227% compared to pre-pandemic levels. It's up 261% compared to 2 seasons ago.
And that's for the month of November, and doesn't even count yet what might have occurred on Black Friday. So you're out there trying to get ahead of the supply chain crisis. You're already getting the out of stock notice.
Yeah, I did a lot of, because I had a lot of time on my hands.
Yeah, you did.
I did a lot of shopping. I'm even ahead of the curve on Christmas shopping.
That's amazing.
This is really wrong. I spent Thanksgiving and the day after doing. I didn't encounter a lot of out of stock. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not shopping for popular things.
You're shopping for guns and stuff.
Regular stuff. Yeah.
One of the parts of your personality people might not fully appreciate is you're a highly organized dude. Like, I know that about you. Your office is put together. You get your checklist done.
You don't get no. That's called Jen got Pete's office together.
No, that's not right.
No.
This is I'm telling you, this dude is bordering on OCD.
I give all credit to Jen, and I'm not.
In fact, in college, I would have my desk, I'd have it all in right angles, and when my roommates wanted to mess with me, they would just mess things on my desk, and it messes with. I'm a right angles kind of guy. Yeah.
Well, I learned something about you
I have my
every day.
list, and it brings the anxiety level down.
Yeah.
Shopping is mostly done. But you're thinking about things like the supply chain, which you normally aren't thinking about.
You shouldn't have to think about it.
You shouldn't have to think about it. And Donald Trump was on Varney yesterday talking about the supply chain and issues getting what you want. Here's what he said.
When you look at what's taken place, when you look at all of these supply chains, we never even heard the words supply chains when I was president. That was not even something that I ever remember even listening to a hearing. What they've done is a lot of the mandates have caused the supply chain problem. In that way, I guess you could say that, what's happening is people are quitting their jobs all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've said that many times. I want to go back to the America where I didn't have to know what the supply chain crisis, what even a supply chain was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I never had to think about it. Mm-hmm. And here we live in this country where, and by the way, ironically, as we're still like they still haven't fixed the supply chain crisis. And yet now we're hearing more talk about our transportation secretary as a potential replacement for Kamala Harris, mm-hmm. and a potential person to run on the Democratic ticket for president.
And it's weird. And we're toying around with the ideas of potential lockdowns once again.
Yes.
We're toying around with the idea of shutting down an economy which created this crisis. Mandates then contributed to it as well, but you cannot shut down an economy and expect it to come rearing back.
Exactly right. All while the state of Florida has the lowest COVID cases in the country.
And probably the highest population of elderly as well, which is ironic as well. But I just wanted to mention, because you mentioned the lockdown, Pete Buttigieg, our transportation secretary, is potentially our new president in 2024, or so the Democrats want, has said, we can't fix the supply chain problem until the pandemic is over, until COVID is over. And now we see these new variants. So that's the answer, is more lockdowns, more fear. And therefore, he doesn't have to do his job of fixing the supply chain because we'll just keep this whole thing going.
It's always a new variant.
And you'll count on a variant about every October, every 2 years.
Oh, I think it's going to, yep. You're probably right.
I mean, however,
they could speed up. The variants could come more quickly. And
we're going to need a new variant here.
My gosh. By the way, we're going to be highlighting small businesses a little bit later in the show, as well as giving you some tips to help you pick out your Christmas tree early. All of this to help you avoid the supply chain issues, which we're highlighting.
It's true.
Good stuff. All right. And turning now to your headlines. A person wielding a knife is shot and killed at the entrance of the Marine Corps recruiting depot in San Diego. Officials say the person got out of a vehicle with the weapon and ignored several commands before a guard opened fire. No one else was hurt. The incident is under investigation. The suspect's identity has not been released. An officer shot in the Bronx in a gunfight is released from the hospital to a hero's welcome from his fellow cops. Officer Robert Holmes was the second cop shot in the shootout Wednesday. His partner was also there to show her support. She was shot in the incident and released from the hospital on Thanksgiving Day. The suspect involved was also hit in the gun battle. He's expected to survive. His charges are pending. Investigators say the gun he fired was reportedly stolen in Georgia. The suspect also has a history of arrests linked to weapons possessions. The California School for the Deaf football team, we've been talking a lot about this, you guys, is hoping to make history tonight in the state championship game. The Cubs attributed their undefeated record to their brotherhood, their two big playoff wins, bringing the school to its first ever state title game in their 68-year history. The championship game is today at 5 p.m. local time in Riverside, California. We wish them all the luck, and those are your headlines. Will suggested, Pete, that this should be the next Fox Nation project, a movie about this football team.
It's a good idea.
I think you know someone you can talk to about that.
We'll see.
I
Get it in the queue.
This is the kind of game that should air for everybody to watch on TV.
I think it would rate. If you gave it the proper attention leading up to the game, if people knew what we know about that game, I think they would definitely tune in.
I mean, I'm not a football fan. I want to see that game.
We'll have highlights. How about this? I'm going to make a promise
when is the
to
game?
Producers. It's tonight.
It's tonight.
5 p.m. Pacific Coast time, so 8 Eastern. I'll make a promise the producers are going to have to keep up with. We're going to bring you results and maybe a few highlights tomorrow.
We should.
Awesome.
Still ahead, if critical race theory can creep into the classrooms of conservative Missouri, it's likely in your classroom as well. Otherwise,
I'm going to go with it.
Waiting on the sunrise.
Hope you're still asleep.
From time to time here on Fox and Friends, we highlight various school boards, various school districts where you can see that critical race theory has infiltrated your children's education. I think one of the things that might not be impressed upon us enough is if you can see it in these various school districts, it's probably in your school district as well. And that's what one op-ed writer at the New York Post is is suggesting to you. Carrie Sheffield wrote that if it's in Missouri, it's probably in your home state as well. Here's what she wrote. If a critical race theory administration or curriculum can make its way into your classrooms or the classrooms of Missouri, it's likely in yours as well.
She says if the lies of critical race theory can creep into the classroom of Missouri's Ozark Mountains, they're undoubtedly in your community, even if school administrators illegally try to hide it. CRT fanatics don't want people to know the truth. But COVID-19 lockdown showed parents on Zoom screens in their own homes what falsehood schools are peddling nationwide. Black parents don't believe their children are inherently capable. White parents don't believe their children are inherently evil. This op-ed, Pete, really spoke to me because I lived in a little town, Wausau, Wisconsin. I saw it when my son went to public school, and it is just as she says. You know, if you live in Brooklyn or you live in the Bay Area in California, they can be pretty out with it, right? But in these little towns, it's really kind of tucked in, and you can't see it. And they use these code words like equity.
Yeah, you need like a secret decoder ring to cut through what they describe it as opposed to what it really is.
And if you bring it up, they'll say, "Oh, that's just a dog whistle. It's not happening here." They make you feel like you're cuckoo, and that's part of their technique as well.
Correct. Or what they do is they say, "No, it's not in the curriculum." You know, as you look into this, you learn there's curriculum and is it pedagogy, whatever it is.
That's how fancy words.
That's how you.
Didn't you learn that at Harvard?
I should have. That's the method you teach by, and so if you teach teachers to teach in a certain way, even though it's not in the curriculum, it makes its way in. And if you've been to the Ozarks, the College of the Ozarks is an awesome, very patriotic, conservative university there. It's about as conservative as it gets. Right. And so this, you were right about it, Will. If we're under the belief that it's not in our schools, we're lying to ourselves.
They play semantic games. They play word games. Critical race theory is only taught in law school by the technical definition. But to your point, equity, and it all plays upon the human emotion of empathy. And we want to have a society where we strive for equality. But they've distorted, they've mutated equality into this concept of equity, which is equal outcomes, and it is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere.
You need to look at what the end game is. Why are they doing this? And I think the reason is that if you can say that America is systemically racist, if you can say that it was founded on slavery instead of on this idea of freedom from the British monarchy, if you can make a case for why this is broken and you need to build back better, that is what this is really about. It is a Marxist idea, and this is cultural Marxism, and we really need to name it for what it is.
Yeah.
The New York Post op-ed continued, and it said, instead of CRT, schools should teach excellence in mathematics. Imagine that. Excellence in mathematics, reading, science, economics, personal finance. That's a really important one for kids to learn. And students should learn how to start businesses, not why they should burn them down. And if schools fail, parents deserve vouchers to send children to schools that don't. I hope someday Springfield, Missouri schools will become those schools again.
So let's prove the point of what we've been talking about, because here's a statement from Springfield Public Schools in response to the belief that critical race theory is being taught there. This is what they said. They said, Springfield Public Schools has been very clear. Critical race theory is not being taught in our classrooms. Our work is focused on equity.
There you go.
Not CRT. Any deliberate attempt to misrepresent this important work is a divisive, misguided distraction. They call it something else. They call it equity. And by doing so, they're revealing precisely what they're teaching inside the classrooms.
You know, really quickly, I was talking about this recently. There's a wonderful writer on Substack. It's called El Gato Malo. But he laid out the 4 levels of liberal propaganda. No, we're never going to teach critical race theory. We're not teaching critical race theory. We're doing it, but for some very specific instances. We've always done it because it's good. You go through those 4 progressions, you can apply it to anything. Inflation, vaccine effectiveness, vaccine mandates, critical race theory. We're currently somewhere in stage between 2 and 3. We're not doing this.
I have a different way to figure it out. If Barack Obama comes out publicly and says, there's no such thing as critical race theory, we're not teaching it, you know you're over the target. You know you're right on it. That is proof to me of that. And I'll tell you, I'm really encouraged by parents. And by the way, we're going to have a panel of moms who have been on the forefront of exposing CRT. And I am encouraged by parents at the school boards. But I also think there's two things that we need to focus on besides just CRT. We need to focus on school choice, parental choice. Every child and every parent should have a right to go to whichever school they want. So there could be a marketplace for ideas and values in schools. And two, while it's great we're looking at schools, don't forget about the most powerful place that CRT is being taught. It's on your child's phone. Big tech is peddling this as well, and you have much less control over what your kids will see and how it's tucked into virtually every message they get on their social media.
Watch just a little bit of Nickelodeon. Or Disney.
That as well.
Which I'm forced to do on occasion. And I do like SpongeBob. But it's not in SpongeBob yet that I've seen. But other than that, look at the commercials. Look at the promos.
Absolutely.
Look at what they talk about. It's all there. And it's reinforced by these words they're already hearing at school. You bring it together and it becomes a worldview, a lens.
Absolutely.
And that's the scary part.
All right. Well, coming up, growing concerns about a new heavily mutated COVID strain prompting the Biden administration to restrict air travel from South Africa. So what do you need to know? Dr. Marty Makary puts it all in perspective next.
Travel restrictions from South Africa and 7 other countries starting Monday over the new COVID Omicron variant. So what do we need to know? What do we know, in fact? Here to react, Fox News medical contributor, Dr. Marty Makary. Dr. Makary, always great to talk to you. Happy Thanksgiving and good morning to you.
You too. Good morning.
You know what I'm shocked by, Dr. Makary, is how much certainty people speak with, and not just speak with, but impose policy based upon a level of certainty, at the same time saying we know very little. So I'd love to go through with you what we do know. First, do travel restrictions work? We've already heard this has escaped Africa. It's in the Netherlands. So do travel restrictions work in keeping a new variant out of the United States?
Well, they may have worked when there's not a period of active testing like last year, but now we have such rigorous testing. And remember, some of these people going back and forth are doing medical surveillance and research. It's already not just in Belgium and South Africa. It's in several countries in Africa. It's in Hong Kong. It's in Israel. So it may well already been seeded. And you wouldn't set a travel restriction in the future. That violates the very principle of doing a ban.
And in fact, we saw Australia and New Zealand basically locked down their entire societies from outsiders, and that didn't keep COVID or the Delta variant out of those countries as well. It seems a fool's errand. Here's another certainty with which people are talking about, Dr. Makary, that I'm curious about. Joe Biden and others have said this is a call to get your booster. Ages 5 and up, absolutely now with this new variant, get your booster. But what do we know about the vaccine's effectiveness on this new variant?
Well, that's exactly the sort of dishonesty right now that is resulting in a massive loss of credibility of public health officials. This new variant has absolutely nothing to do with boosters that we know of. There's no data whatsoever to suggest that a booster would somehow be protective against this particular variant. We don't even know if the immune system works or doesn't work against the new variant. It probably works because of the thousands of variants we've had to date. All are encompassed by vaccinated and natural immunity. But this is a sort of making conclusions without data, rationale right now that's alienating people.
And in fact, when you combine that with the horrible track record of their certainty, then you lose a lot of credibility. Can I ask you one more? Out of personal curiosity, we hear about mutations, and do they happen in the unvaccinated, in countries where there's a low vaccination rate, or among unvaccinated individuals? Is that true? Do we know, Dr. Makary, where mutations come from?
We know from the influenza model that comes from crowded places, and people who are immunosuppressed can have a more chronic, long-term infection, and maybe that's where some of these mutations come from. That's been postulated with the millions that have HIV in Africa. But the reality is we don't know. We've got a rapidly spreading virus in an area with very low vaccination rates. That is, South Africa has 35% of their population vaccinated. May not be representative of the United States, where we've got 83% of adults vaccinated. And remember, therapeutics, again, are massively understated here.
Yes.
The new drugs that we have coming out, Merck and Pfizer's, would be effective against the new Omicron variant because they work on the machinery of replication, not the spike protein. And other therapeutics like fluvoxamine, which has been on the shelf now for years and has been an understated therapeutic with good randomized controlled data, published in Lancet, reducing death by 91%, by reducing your inflammatory response. So
Right.
these drugs would work against the new variant.
Oh, I want to just, let's just highlight that for just a moment. You're talking about the new therapeutic drug. Merck has one coming out. I believe Pfizer has one. They're also looking and seeking for FDA approval on. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. McCary, they work to do the same thing that others have pointed out ivermectin has done, which is stop virus replicate, stop it from replicating within your system. Now, there needs to be studies on the Merck and Pfizer pills as well as ivermectin. But you're saying, as opposed to the vaccine, we're not talking about stopping you from acquiring it, but stopping the vaccine from replicating inside your body, and that's been highly effective?
That's right, and fluvoxamine blocks that inflammatory response to the virus, so these are very effective treatments. And by the way, the Merck and Pfizer drugs reduce COVID deaths to 0 in the phase 3 clinical trials. These are formal trials. These are not controversies. And the FDA is going to decide on Merck's drug this Tuesday, and we could have it as soon as 2 weeks from now.
And then that would draw into question why we would have vaccine mandates, or even why all the attention and focus on vaccines was such a highly effective therapeutic out there.
Yeah, we needed a balanced approach. And when you look at New York's state of emergency, look, we need to do elective surgery. We need to do aneurysm repairs, cancer resections, hip replacements. This is not something where you can cry wolf many times.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Marty McCary, worthy of a longer conversation. Hope to have one soon.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. Obviously, everybody trying to get home after this weekend, and for the most part, we're looking pretty good. We had a big storm yesterday across parts of the Northeast. It brought a lot of lake effect snow. Today, things calmed down a little bit. More on the way. I'll show you that in a second. Down across the south, we've got a lot of rain across parts of Texas. This is going to cause maybe a little bit of localized flooding, but mostly just some nuisance travel especially on those roads and across I-10 throughout the overnight hours tonight into tomorrow. Then we're watching this next little disturbance. Not a big disturbance, but you see that kind of mixing and some rain that we've got across parts of Iowa. Watch the future radar here. That pulls throughout the day across parts of the Ohio Valley, brings snow back across parts of Pennsylvania in throughout areas of the Great Lakes. And then we might even see a few snowflakes by the morning across the coastal cities. Nothing that's going to cause any travel problems for you tomorrow, but that colder air is back in, and then we'll see that lake effect snow continuing again behind it. Overall temperatures not looking that bad. The coldest is kind of across parts of the northern plains, but even at that 27 degrees for a high today in Fargo, certainly could be much worse. Next thing we're going to be watching is a lot of rain that's coming back into the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be causing that threat for flooding again for them this coming week. All right, Rachel, Pete, send over to you.
Thank you, Rick.
Rick?
All right. Well, the Salvation Army is accused of going woke over its resource guide titled, "Let's Talk About Racism." The document released earlier this year says, quote, "The desire is that Salvationists achieve the following: lament, repent, and apologize for biases or racist ideologies held and actions committed."
But the group is denying reports that it's asking donors to apologize for their racism, saying in a statement, in part, quote, "The Salvation Army is not asking donors to apologize for their skin color, and we do not endorse any philosophy or ideology. Such claims are simply false and injure our ability to fulfill our mission, which is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination." Here to react is Fox News contributor Joe Concha. Joe, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving. Great to see you. You know, the Salvation Army, you think of the red kettle outside, you think of Christmas, you think of giving. You don't think of woke or a statement like this on their website. They're trying to deny it. What do you think?
Well, it's a he said, she said situation at this point, but the fact that they even had to address those reports out there, and that tells you that, you know, there is a there. And if you go on social media now, it's ugly. You know, a lot of people saying, I've always donated to the Salvation Army, but I'm not going to do that anymore after they got woke. And look, by telling people if this is true, based on their race, they need to apologize, not because of their specific actions, but because of the color of their skin. That literally flies in the face of that mission statement that you just read. And I I just feel sorry for all those folks out there from the Salvation Army, the boots on the ground, so to speak, standing out there in the freezing cold, ringing that bell all day, all night, who had nothing to do with this possible edict from the top. But again, we don't quite know whether it is true or whether it is not. But there's so much wokeness going on these days with corporations and even charities. It's why people are inclined that this may be a thing. By the way, if you look at the Salvation Army's executive page, Rachel, that team is comprised overwhelmingly of white people. So I don't know, maybe you look at your own hiring practices first before possibly piously telling people, particularly white donors, what they should apologize for.
Yeah, well, Marxism was also created by a white German guy, so I don't know about it. You know, this whole thing is so crazy. I have a friend, her name is Debbie. Every year they get together, their family, and their Christmas tradition is they go and ring the Salvation Army bell. I know Debbie, if she knows about this story, she might not go out and ring that bell in the cold Wisconsin, you know, winter anymore. And so it's not just the donors, it's the volunteers. And again, why are these people at the very top making decisions that they know are just going to divide the country at a time of Christmas where we're supposed to all come together?
Yeah, I think, Rachel, the company needs to do a little bit more here on the communications front and needs to condemn critical race theory, because you think of the greatest civil rights leader of any time, Martin Luther King Jr., and he said it best: don't judge others by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And CRT teaches the exact opposite of that. So the Salvation Army should come out and say, we do not embrace this. We don't embrace, for instance, you have kids, I have kids, Pete has kids. Our kids, mine as young as kindergarten, possibly being taught to judge others through the prism of race instead of the content of their character. So hopefully they go out and do that, but I have a feeling they're just going to hope that the news cycle sweeps us away and that the donations keep coming in. But I think it's going to have an impact. And unfortunately, the people who get impacted ultimately because of this will be those who need that money most, Rachel.
It's true. I mean, I feel like at some level they must have thought they could check some sort of a woke box.
Or they hired someone, maybe.
Or they hired someone and they put it on their website. I think it'll just sit there. And ultimately, in this day and age, these things are seen and they mean something to people. Joe, I mean, just like the charity means something. If you stand for that, I mean, by the way, their name, the Salvation Army. We are all in need of salvation because we're all sinners and we're all flawed. To include racism or sexism or whatever ism you want to pick, feels like a bad move for them, Joe. Last word real quick.
Last word is, happy Thanksgiving to both of you. A great year for both of you. Obviously, Pete, with your book, and Rachel, I was on with your husband yesterday. Your book is now at #2 on the New York Times bestseller list. I mean, that is just incredible, because I believe this is your first joint book together, and that just shows you how many people love watching you both and the power of this network as far as you want to.
Taylor, join us now. Good morning, James and Taylor. Congratulations.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
We're watching the video. We were just watching the video on screen. I think we have to start with James. Do we have to start with the surprise or the planning of the surprise? James, take us into the moment. I mean, what was going through your mind? How did the reveal occur?
So we were sitting at the game, and I saw they were doing the kiss cam. I saw the camera come up on us, and I thought we were going to be on the kiss cam, which is pretty cool in and of itself. And then we break away from the kiss, and she says, I have something I need to tell you. And I look up at the screen, and that's when you see my jaw drop and just a pure shock at the moment.
Yeah, your reaction, James, was amazing. I could watch that.
It was my favorite part when he throws his arms up in the air.
Taylor, tell me why you decided to do it this way. That we know you wanted to surprise him, but why in this way?
Well, I love always surprising my husband, especially, go big or go home, I guess.
You did go big.
It is our first child and everything, so I was over the moon the morning I found out. Literally, it was just in tears, and he was still sleeping, actually. So I pulled myself together, and I was like, you know what? it's a bit of news. It's like when you're that excited, you just like kind of want the world to know. So I called up our rep who sold us tickets to the Orlando Magic game later that day and said, hey, if I buy us some good tickets, is there any way that, I could do this and, tell my husband on the kiss cam that he's going to be a dad?
Such a great idea.
So cool and so special. So we'll do what we do on TV, which is get ahead of ourselves a little bit. Do we know boy, girl? Do we have any name leads at this point?
Well, I am only 4 weeks right now, so we don't know the gender. I'm very excited. But we do have a couple names picked out if we do have a baby boy or a baby girl. But as of right now, I guess we're calling the little seed Magic. So
all right, Magic is a great name. Well, we're so happy for you. The world is celebrating. The world is celebrating with you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
They wanted the world to know.
Yeah, they did.
Accomplished it,
Yep.
for sure.
All right.
So cool.
Thank
Taylor and
you.
James, thank you so much. You see those names? They're coming up. More Fox and Friends in just a
Morning.
moment.
It's a warm shot
Look
over
at you.
Florida. Not so warm in the studio, apparently.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah, right before Rachel's like, would you mind if we bring a heater in here?
I did.
Yeah, that'd be great, actually. It's freezing in here.
Yeah, it is. It's very cold. People don't realize how cold it is. I wish I could wear a sweater or a suit or something like that.
We do have on more material than you, and
Yeah.
it does keep us
Keeps us awake.
slightly warmer
It's true.
on this holiday weekend, this Thanksgiving holiday weekend.
Beautiful.
Aren't those cool? And look at the little hat, too, with the little pom-pom.
Gloves.
You can get all these.
There's a reason this is sitting out here. That's right.
It's true.
That's
Fox
right.
Shop.
There's the
I
Fox
think it's shop.foxnews.com. And it's not just Fox News now. You can get Fox and Friends. You can get The Five. You name it. There's Gutfeld.
We have big sales. It's Black Friday, Black Saturday, I guess.
Whatever.
20% off and at our site. So visit
Even got the new logo on it.
shop.foxnews.com.
Oh, nice.
That's really up. That's
Yeah.
good coordination between marketing and show and graphics.
Socks. You can have some fancy socks like
impressed.
Pete Hegg said.
Mm-hmm.
Get all your items at foxshop.com. By the way, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. We had some fun. I think we have some pictures we
Yeah.
can show you very quickly of our various holiday gatherings.
Are they going to pull them up? There they are.
That is okay. That's Texas. That's my family. I told you it's a 50-person gathering. A lot of
Wow.
grandkids. My mom gets a bounce house. That's a halftime football, not a full-on game, but a halftime football throwing contest. 36
Looks like the neighbors
million.
will come over for that. That's pretty awesome.
There's no neighbors, Rachel.
Is this out in the middle of nowhere?
It takes a few acres for the neighbors
okay.
to travel across.
This is halftime of the Cowboys game.
Yeah.
Which was rough.
Which was a stinker. You texted me and you said you're a little jealous of your team not playing on Thanksgiving.
I am.
There's a pro and a con to that is. And by the way, it was the highest rated game since 1990. 36 million people watched that game. You're talking about 30 years, so it means 36 million people saw my team put up a stinker.
That's too
I also
bad.
texted you, I think it's going to be Cowboys-Vikings in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, you got a little ahead of yourself, I think.
I
on
know,
that.
but we're surging.
All right,
I
well,
wouldn't
here's
want to play us right now.
Here's how the Duffys had their
Oh, let's see.
Thanksgiving. So in our family, the kids dressed up as Indians and pilgrims. They do that every year, the little ones, until they reach an age where they're like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Sure.
But we had more Indians and pilgrims. We had 2 Indians, 1 pilgrim. And they're there. That's how it started. Let me show you how it ended. That's how it ends.
There you go. That's exactly how it should end, right there. Phenomenal.